This episode is brought to you by Gino's East, LA. Gino's East is one of Chicago's most famous deep dish pizza places. They've been open since 1966, and there are still some people who don't realize Gino's East is here in LA now too. And let me tell you, it feels like you're in Chicago when you're in there. I'm in there most every Friday for happy hour, and it feels like home. Home for us Chicagoans, and a friendly place for people who have never experienced Chicago to get a real feel and real taste for what it is that so many people rave about. I always have a difficult time deciding what to order at Gino's because there's so much great stuff on the menu. My go-to is probably the tavern pizza, cheese and sausage. But when I see someone next to me eating the deep dish, my mouth starts to water. Then I see the Italian beef with marinara, and I want to snatch it from the waiter's tray. Every friend I take there never leaves without feeling like they just experienced a meal in Chicago. They can't wait for me to invite them back, and I just tell them they can go there without me. Gino's East of Chicago in Los Angeles was named Best Pizza in the Southland by the LA Times readers 2 years in a row. There's half-price bottles of wine on Mondays and Tuesdays, lunch special every weekday, personal-sized 7-inch deep dish salad and a pop for $12.95, Italian beef, fries, and a pop for $12.95. That's pretty good. It's more than just a Chicago restaurant. It's one of the best restaurants in LA. Check out the friendly confines of Gino's East LA today on the corner of Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, just off the 101. See you there on Friday sometime. Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and crackerjacks. Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo, and I'm here with my wife, Christy.
Hello, hello.
Season 2 of our podcast.
Welcome back.
Feels good. It's a new season for baseball, for our podcast.
Let me ask you, when you were a kid and, winter, your dad wasn't playing and it was cold and dreary, and what was it like when spring was coming up?
Well, winter was fun. We had an ice rink on the lake that my dad and Glenn Becker built for us. And everyone in our area would come over and play hockey. So we had real nets, like NHL nets, and we had lights. So the winter was fun as a kid. So when baseball came around, it was a new beginning. Every spring was a new beginning, like this will be the year. That's why it always stuck in my mind.
Your dad always had that attitude.
Yeah, it was optimistic. It was, we're off to leaving, because fun in the winter, but also it's cold, and by the time you're in the late January, February, you're waiting, we're waiting to go to Arizona. And boom, 70-degree weather, and we're out there for a full month, and we leave school behind. And it's just me and my brother, Ronnie and I together, and we get tutored twice a week. So yeah, every spring was it was great because it was a new beginning, and it just felt like, wow, what's going to happen this year? Because you never knew. You thought every year something good was going to happen that season. Yeah. How about you? What was spring like for you?
Well, we didn't have dreary weather in the winter. I mean, Northern California, it was pretty wonderful in the winter, just some rain. We were, we didn't go skiing or anything like that. So we were more for the summer sports. We would go water skiing and camping and fishing but not every spring, but a lot of springs, like a handful of springs. We, when the ice would melt in the Sierra Nevadas, we would go up just north of Yosemite to Fremont Lake, and we would 3 hours in on horseback with all of this gear and everything. I
remember seeing you had an old, home movies of that.
Yes.
That
Bill
going
Horhorse.
Through the mountains, and it's like you got snow and it's melting, and you guys get to a campsite. You're out there for 3 days.
We have to cross a river on these horses too. I mean, and it could be, because the snow runoff is turning into the water, and so it can be like a big year. If we had a big year of rain that year, it was a pretty full river, and you're having to cross it with. It
looked cool, and then you fished, and so that was your spring, kind of like
that was our spring
trips. Kind of a new trip to start the year?
New trip, start the year.
What did spring feel like for you, though? Was it like, for me, it was just like, I was like, okay, this is it. It's like everything's starting over. It felt it. I don't know, maybe because of baseball.
See, in California, we really don't have that, because I
Right.
don't really feel like, oh, it's suddenly spring. You know what I mean? It just kind of is like, because at home, I mean, I know that's like in the mountains, you experience that. You know what I mean? There's certain times we couldn't go that weekend because the snow was too much. So, you know, yes, there's definitely that difference in the mountain areas, but where we lived, I mean, you couldn't really tell the difference between summer and spring. I mean,
Right. I think ours was just my mindset as a kid, because we were so attached to the baseball team. That's what I knew, everything. So maybe that's why I was like, something new this year, right? Because you're starting over. You know, it's
your dad literally
that season's
does
gone.
different.
Yeah, you're literally starting over. It's a new season, a baseball season. So
what did your dad do in the winter?
He watched football. He snowmobiled a lot. And he just relaxed. I remember he liked to have a beer. He liked to have his tabs, but you know, and he worked a lot. You know, so he was always kind of working and doing stuff. So, but yeah, he wasn't like he worked out and got ready for baseball. He didn't. When they went to spring training, that's when they got in shape. They were out of shape when they went to spring training, you know, because I remember like week before the ice is melting on our lake, and he's still having a beer in his hand. Okay, baseball's going to start in about a week or so, and then they get in shape. So that's why to us it was a new start. But yeah, but for everyone though, summer's around the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just something special about summer. So
yes, my birthday's in the summer, so I always like summer.
Very special. Yes. Yeah. Well, our special guest today, Ron Rapoport, a great sports journalist. I mean, I can't wait for you guys to hear this interview. We met Ron, and Ron worked for the Sun Times for over 20 some years, worked at the LA Times, but we met Ron
at the LA Times Festival of Books in 2019.
2019, where he was on a panel with these amazing biographers and talking about the lives of African Americans.
Yeah.
And his book on Ernie Banks, Let's Play 2, he was one of the biographers, and quite a panel, man. And the book, Ernie's book, I don't know if you guys have read it, but we talk about it. It's amazing, and we really go in depth on that, and it's pretty cool. So can't wait for you to hear that. And then our crackerjack is
Peter,
my buddy Peter Nestos, who's from Glenview, who owns Spiro's Deli. Spiro's Deli has been in Glenview since we moved there in 1969. And Peter's dad is Spiro Nestos. That's what the restaurant is, Spiro. And Peter took it over when his dad passed away. And that restaurant's been there since the mid-'60s. And a great deli. You got to go in there, get the bomber. But I get Peter on the phone because Peter, you know, Peter, he's an armchair GM. So I'm going to ask him about every season. I want to know what his thoughts are. He goes at it hard. And he's dedicated his life to coaching sports in Glenview, baseball and football, and he coaches his sons, who are great little athletes and ball players, and we talk about that. Yeah, his daughter too, Mary Catherine. But it's just a cool conversation. Can't wait for you to hear that. This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954, located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santos sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley.
My special guest has been a sports journalist for over 50 years. He spent a lot of it as a sports columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. He was also with the Los Angeles Daily News, wrote for the Associated Press in New York and San Francisco, the LA Times. He won the 2015 Ring Lardner Award for Excellence in Sports Journalism. And through all that, he wrote a dozen books about sports figures and entertainers. One of the books that hit me hard was Let's Play 2, The Legend of Mr. Cub, The Life of Ernie Banks. Ron Rapoport, thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm always glad to talk to you.
Oh, it's great, man. And I got to tell you, I want to read a couple of powerful quote reviews by some heavyweights on your book, Let's Play 2. Okay? So, first one. From the best-selling author Scott Turow, who is from Chicago, went to New Trier High School, said this about your book. Growing up, every kid I knew wanted to be Ernie Banks, Chicago's Mr. Cub. But there was much more to Ernie than his MVP seasons or his famously sunny outward demeanor. Let's Play 2 captures the best of Banks' playing moments, but also delves deeply into a man who did not seem to want you to know more than you could see. Rapoport, a legendary Chicago sports writer, has written a fascinating, readable, and impeccably researched book about a man who was a Hall of Famer, but also a decided creature of his times. From the great documentarian Ken Burns, this is a wonderful book worthy of all the energy and vitality Ernie Banks brought to his remarkable career. But it is also a revealing portrait of the often difficult life of a black ball player in America and the often lonely man imprisoned and isolated by his exuberant outer image. And from the famous Pulitzer Prize-winning George Will said this about your book. Ernie Banks crossed the bridge from a segregated nation and national pastime to a better place, smiling all the way. Although his smile was real, so were the scarring experiences he smiled through. He was more complicated and interesting than the human sunbeam he chose to resemble. With a reporter's diligence and a historian's sensibility, Ron Rapoport tells Banks' story, and that of the different nations at the two ends of the bridge. Wow. Powerful words by some very knowledgeable Americans, I'd say, Ron.
Well, that was very nice of them to say things like that. It made me feel good, Jeff, as I'm sure you can imagine. I got to tell you that one of the things that I enjoyed about writing the book was learning more about your dad. He's obviously an important part of Ernie's story, and just learning more about him and about their relationship. And I'll tell you, one of the things I came to appreciate is what a great ball player your father was, offensively and defensively. I mean, he was a rock for 10, 12 years. He just did everything the Cubs asked of him. And I know that it upset him that he didn't get into the Hall of Fame and upset his family, including you, until after he died. And I consider it a real blot on the Hall of existence that he didn't get in sooner.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ron. Yeah, but, we're glad he's in now, right? I mean, and I think, he's happy about that. And like you said, him and Ernie, it was one of the reasons my dad came to Chicago, because of Ernie Banks, and he wanted to help him win a World Series. And unfortunately, these two are the only two that really never played in a playoff game, coming from a team like that. Pretty amazing, right?
It is pretty amazing when you think about it. I made a list of first ballot Hall of Famers who never played in a World Series. There's a bunch of them now. But back when I was writing the book, there were only a few. Ernie was the first ballot Hall of Famer who had never played in the World Series, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
Not just played in it, not won it. After that, he was joined by Rod Carew and Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Thomas of the White Sox, and a few others. But that just goes to show you how unique it was for a great player like Ernie and like your dad to have played so long and played in some pretty good teams and never even have made a playoff game. Kind of very sad commentary on both of their careers. However, it doesn't take away from what great ball players they both were.
No, it doesn't. And you're right. They both really wanted to win bad for the city. I mean, they both gave everything to the city of Chicago. And it's, it's too bad, but they're remembered, and they played hard. And, it's even tough on our family still thinking about 1969, Rod. So it's just like, that was a scar for my dad and our family and the Bankses too, for everyone that was involved in that year. But those two for sure, because they, and Billy Williams too, such a big part, and they played so many years together.
Right. Right. Jenkins, I got to tell you though, Jeff, one thing about it is I know everybody was very angry and very upset and all those sad emotions. But you know what? When I came to it all these years later, 20, 30 years later, talking to people about it, people who were there, fans, you know what they remember? They remember those 5 great months when the city was on fire and they were winning games two at a time, and they were leading the league, and this is going to be our year. And yeah, it ended badly, a bad September. It all came apart. But what they remember now is the sweetness of that whole summer. It was a great summer, and to the people who were there, the fans who were there, I guess there are fewer of them now, that's the part that they remember, how great it was to be a Cub fan during that summer of '69.
It sure was. And I was a kid and I remember it. I was young. I was 6, but I remember it. And, about that year, too, like you said, I mean, there was so much excitement. You had the bleacher bumps that became kind of like a new fan of that time.
Right.
So Chicago really, the team in 1969 team really stood out nationally, too. I mean, everyone's like, hey, you go into Chicago, watch out for their fans. No one wanted to be in left field. It was just amazing, like you said, and the times, too. A lot was happening in '69. We were in Vietnam. You had the landing on the moon. You had Woodstock. It was just the year was vibrant in so many ways, back and forth.
And the Cubs were part of that. The Cubs were part of that excitement. Nationally, as you say, part of the problem with the reason that people like Ernie and people like your dad didn't get the attention that a lot of other players got is that they never stepped on a national stage. And here they were now. They were the best team in baseball. Everybody was writing about them. Everybody was making pilgrimages to Chicago. That was their moment to become nationally recognized, which had escaped them all those years before.
Yeah, and that's very true. And I've read so many things on my dad. Obviously, I talked to my dad about this a lot when he was here. But even after he passed, they've been looking more into it, just the psychology of what it was like to play all those years and never get there, and where he came from. Both of them were just like meant to be these ball players. If you look at their lives and their pathways and reading your book on Ernie, I mean, wow, his story before he became a Cub is the story, and that's what where he came out of. And I was blown away by that part of it, because that's the part I really didn't know about Ernie. We all knew about, hey, are you married yet? What's going on, Jeff? When you getting married? He kind of play it like that. But to see the side that he came from, Ron, I mean, it takes you to those kind of players back then. And guys like my dad, too. He had his own life of an inner city kid growing up where his dad left him. But what you did with capturing Ernie's youth and growing up, the family of he was the oldest boy in a family of 12, right? They didn't have any electricity.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about that a bit.
Well, I thank you for saying that. It was very important to me to be able to discover all that. I was lucky. I was able to find Ernie's older sister. You're right. He was the second of 12. The oldest is Edna. And Jeff, I think she may still be with us. She'd be in her mid-90s now. Well, she was wonderful telling me stories about growing up and what the family was like, what mom was like, what dad was like, what the neighborhood was like. But then I got extremely lucky. I was able to find 5 of Ernie's high school classmates. They were getting older now, too, of course. But they had wonderful memories of what the neighborhood was like, what school was like, what sports in the school were like. And I just couldn't get enough of it. I just loved writing that and finding I was able to travel to the site of his original home, which is now a museum, if you can believe that. And it was just exciting to reconstruct that era, to talk about some of the history of it and so far. And I was able to find historians from that era in Dallas who were able to tell me about what that area of Dallas was like, how segregated the city was, and that sort of thing. So that really helped me. And I thought that by learning where Ernie came from, learning what his family life was like, was very helpful in helping us to understand the man and the ball player he became.
And it was almost like he became that person early on. Like he didn't mind that he was poor. He accepted it, and where Edna kind of didn't, right? And so you got to see the older sister didn't like being so poor, and then to have the father say, "Well, you weren't around when it was really bad." It's like, whoa, wow! I can only imagine that.
The red lines, that
kind of thing. Yeah.
Ernie, it sort of. We saw some of the characteristics that we would come to see later, and when he came to Chicago, became a great ball player. But even then, you're right. Nothing really bothered Ernie. He wasn't upset about, the family foraging for food in a dumpster behind the supermarket, and then kids at school finding out about it and calling them names, and you guys, your mom dumpster going in that dumpster again, and Edna would get all upset. Ernie would just laugh it off. Ernie didn't really care that much, and that's the Ernie we knew. Nothing really bothered him. He wanted the key to understanding Ernie, and you could even see it in these early days we're talking about, was that he completely wanted to avoid drama, avoid trouble. He didn't want anything to upset him. He would go out with his buddies, and they'd go rambling around the neighborhood as teenage boys would do. And maybe they'd get in trouble, maybe they'd rob a store, do something, and they'd turn around, and Ernie would be gone. He didn't get involved in that. They called him Casper, after the ghost, because whenever there was trouble, Ernie disappeared like a ghost, So, and that was the way he was later on, wasn't he? He didn't. He just didn't get involved in any kind of trouble. He never. Listen to this. I talked to Doug Harvey, the great umpire.
Yep.
And I said, "What was it like, to umpire a game with Ernie?" And he said, "Ron, I wanted to tell you something. Ernie never disputed a pitch." I said, "Come on, Doug." He said, "He never turned around. The way ball players will do to look at the umpire is to say, 'Boy, you really blew that call.' Ernie never did that. He never disputed a call, ever. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I can't see a player like that. But that's the way Ernie was, off the field and on.
Yeah, and it just seemed like, he went through life like, hey, this is life, and I'm going to just kind of keep moving forward and not worried about being poor. Like you said, they went into the dumpster to get some food at times from the grocery store that had some things were spoiled, but underneath wasn't spoiled. And the teacher caught him, and like you said, that was like Ernie didn't care in the school. You want to tease me? I don't care. And then, like you said, he ran once through his trouble. He'd be gone. But that's kind of also being smart too, and not judging, and kind of like, okay, this is my life. I'm going to make the best of it. And that's what you really see reading that. And then the powerful, guys that took him under the wing, like Buck O'Neill and Cool Papa Bell. I mean, these guys from the Negro League that saw him playing softball and just like, became like another father to him, Talk about that a bit.
Well, it was funny. I mean, he adored Buck O'Neill, and there are a couple of people I talked to who say that hey, it's a beautiful day for a ball game. What else would you rather be doing? Isn't this great? That came from Buck. That's the way Buck approached baseball.
Wow.
He said, isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful? And here's the thing. Ernie was young when he was in the Negro Leagues, when he was at the Kansas City Monarchs.
Right.
He was 18 and 19, and he's playing with older ball players. And they all sort of took him under his wing. But here's the thing. They traveled together. They stayed in hotels together. They ate together. They went out to clubs together. There was a real comfort to Ernie to be around these people. And when the chance came for him to go to Chicago, because he was playing pretty well towards the end of the 53 season, and the Cubs wanted to buy his contract, Ernie didn't want to go. He was happy where he was. He didn't care about the money or the fame. And finally, one of his teammates said, "Ernie, you've got to go. You're getting the chance." These were older guys, You're getting the chance we didn't get. You have to go there and do this. So he felt the responsibility when he came to the Cubs. However, he was having such a good time and learning so much, and learning so much about baseball, by the way. Buck O'Neill would take him out into the hot sunshine, at Kansas City, and hit 100 grounders to him. I mean, he really was a demanding guy, but Ernie learned a lot from them, and he just loved it. And I think he would say that he never enjoyed playing baseball more than when he was with the Monarchs.
Yeah, you could feel those guys too. I mean, here's guys that didn't get a chance to go into the big leagues, right? And then weren't bitter, but then mentored the ones below them that could have a chance, and then guide them.
They were not bitter. They wanted to help the younger guys get along. They didn't say, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you anything. You lucky guy, you come along at the right time." And we didn't get it, but they didn't feel that way.
No,
and they were very helpful to Ernie. All of the Monarchs.
Yeah, and I also felt too reading the book, like even in the neighborhood, as segregated as was, and how if you went outside of that, it's dangerous for them. But they all watched each other. The families watched everyone. It was like
The teachers were in tune with the kids in the neighborhood. And there was just this great mentorship and community that you could see where Ernie came from and why he felt loved and comfortable there, even though it was so difficult as far as the poverty. It's amazing. And that story just really just tugged at me all the way through. And I've even told Joey Banks this. I said, Joey, the movie about your dad it ends at him signing with the Cubs, because that's a journey of itself. And then do a highlight reel a very artful highlight reel at the end of Mr. Cub, because this was Mr. Cub of where he came from. Much different than a Jackie Robinson too, right?
Exactly. I mean, Jackie grew up in Pasadena. He grew up,
right.
He'd been in the Army. He was 20 years old when he signed with the Dodgers. He played football at UCLA, and basketball. Jackie'd been around. He'd had some experiences in the white world. Now, you were talking about, and by the way, you're the filmmaker, and I like your idea for a film of Ernie's youth, and then maybe at the end, see him hitting home runs and winning MVPs. I like your filmmaker sensibility there. But talking about the neighborhood, Jeff, this is important. It was very poor, and it was completely black. Ernie never had a meaningful conversation with a white person until he went into the Army.
Wow.
But here they are. But you're right. It's a poor neighborhood. It's a black neighborhood. But everybody looked out for everybody else. If you were misbehaving on your way, on the way home from school, say, you were likely to hear a mother or a father call out, "Hey, boy, I'm watching you. Get home." And Ernie would say, or Ed and I forget which one, you knew that when you got home, they would have already called your parents and you were in trouble.
Right. I love that.
The teachers looked out for them. It was a kind of neighborhood where everybody took care of everybody else, and that was good. And Ernie had a mother and a father. They were there for him. He didn't grow up in a single family home or anything like that. He had brothers and sisters to take care of and to help. He really was part of a family, and he was part of a neighborhood that, as poor as it was and as segregated it was not a bad place for a young boy to grow up.
No, I felt that, man. I felt like I was in a movie there. Again, I tell Joey, like, this is the book. Take Ron's book here, because this is it, man. And so, but I felt that, because when I get into the visuals and I pop into a world, I was like, oh my God, I just popped into this world. And I felt that even, with Eddie the father, they all were part of, like, they had to work together as a family. Everyone had a chore. And Edna's chopping the firewood because they didn't have any electricity. And you think Ernie would chop the firewood, but no, he's carrying the wood. It's like they all had their different kind of chores to make sure, their house was running smoothly, and could put food on the table. And even when they wanted to have a kind of a night out for the family, they had to go pay a couple of quarters for the neighbor's electricity to point it in and listen to Batman on the radio, right? Am I?
No, that's exactly right. They would do that, and if the electricity failed in the house next door, then they couldn't listen to the radio. I mean, we're talking about outdoor toilets. We're talking about very, very poor home, but they did live in a house. They did have a home.
They did. They had a great home.
They didn't make a lot of money, but he was sort of a handyman. He'd do odd jobs around the neighborhood. He could fix things up. And he once took him out of school and made him come pick cotton with him. Well, one summer doing that, Ernie was very happy to go back to school. And I'll tell you, his classmates were afraid. Ernie was a good student. Not great, but he was good. And he showed up and he did the work, His classmates were afraid that once his dad took him out to pick cotton because he needed it for the family income, maybe they'd never see him again. But he came back the next year, and he was able to continue on. I think his dad knew that Ernie had some talent and had some prospects, and that he needed a chance to prove himself. And I think Ernie was lucky, and we're all lucky that his family took care of him as hard as it was. I don't think they ever starved. I think they were okay. The government was distributing cheese and that sort of thing.
Right.
And there were they had some money. They were able to buy some food. But you're right. The supermarket not far away would throw out perfectly good food because on top of it, the grapes had gotten, rotten or something, but underneath it was all fine. Anyway, that was Ernie's life, and I like your idea about a movie. You're the filmmaker.
I've told Joey that. I told him already about your book, so he knows. So it's his father's story, and I hope he goes that direction. But anyway, I was just captivated by the whole story because I knew Ernie well. I mean, I knew him since I was a little kid, growing up, and saw him, and I saw one time a serious side, but you mostly saw the sunshine side, and now I get it. I get how he was, and there was it was a gift to the community as far as the people that wrapped their arms around him. I think they do that when they see someone special. Like they did that with my dad too. Like my dad's mom and sister wrapped their arms around him. They knew they had to watch him, and he had good guidance all along with some mentors that were lucky that he was lucky for them to be there. And I felt those kind of guys with those stories that they're almost, it's a portrait of a baseball player, and Ernie and my dad, they're both big portraits of a baseball player.
Yeah,
both their stories.
There were people in Dallas, in a part of town, there was an ex-Negro leaguer called Bill Blair, and he might have been the first one to see Ernie's talent. As you say, playing softball. But he saw that Ernie could really hit and that he was coachable and so on. And he's the one who called Buck O'Neill, who he was close to, and said, Buck, I got a kid down here. You got to look at him. And I talked to Buck's son, who was so funny, and Daryl, and he said, and my dad would say, is he good? Can he do it? Can he step on it? Can he put his foot on it? And he keeps recreate the conversation. And Bill Blair would say, Buck, if I tell you he's good, you just go ahead. You send him bus fare, and we're going to get him up there, and you're going to see. I'm not going to lie to you, Buck. I know what I'm talking about. Funny recreating that conversation. But seriously, Ernie was lucky that he was discovered by a guy who knew Buck O'Neill. And that's how it all really began. And Ernie went there in his first year. He didn't play real well. And he'd gotten married, and he missed a girlfriend and so on. Then he goes into the Army for 2 years. Okay, and he's playing baseball there, for Army teams. And he's playing pretty well.
Right.
Playing pretty well. I found a guy, one of his teammates, who talked about, we all knew that there was only one real ball player in that field, and it was Ernie. Well, now, 2 years later, he comes back to the Monarchs, and he's not playing well early in the season, and he's missing the wife, and he jumps ship. He goes home, and Buck has to go down to Dallas to bring him back. Can you imagine if Buck had said, well, if the kid doesn't want to play, the heck with him? He goes down and he gets him, and for the last couple of months of the 53 season, Ernie tears the cover off the ball. I mean, he's just hitting a ton, and that's when the Cubs get interested and buy out his contract, or after the season ended for the Monarchs in mid-September in Pittsburgh. They call Ernie in and they say, you're going to Chicago. Right now, we're going to put you on a bus. And he goes to Chicago, and he plays in a couple of games in 53. And he was never out of the lineup after that for like 10 years.
Wow.
In 54, he goes out and he proves himself. He was third in the Rookie of the Year balloting. 55, he has a breakout season where he's leading the league in homers and RBIs. But again, it was all because he was in that neighborhood. You go back to the people who took care of him. You go back to the guy who sends him to Buck. And it all just worked out for Ernie. His talent was so great that it wouldn't be denied.
Yeah, and you're right. And thank God for Buck O'Neill, because not only did he grab Ernie, and he was pivotal, he also helped Billy Williams. Because Billy took time. I had that conversation with Billy. He was going to quit at one time because he was getting sick of how he was being treated in Double-A, and so he took some time off, and Buck went down to talk to him. I mean, talk about a guy. Wow, what a mentor. And I just feel too that Ernie, when you told the story about how he play in an All-Star game in the Negro League in Comiskey Park, and that's when he first went to Wrigley Field with Buck.
He'd been through Chicago on trips with the Monarchs. They would travel through, but he'd never been at Wrigley Field. I'm not sure he'd ever heard of it. And all of a sudden, he's in this bus going to Chicago, and Buck meets him and picks him up, and they go for a drive, and he doesn't know where they're going. And all of a sudden, he sees the big Cub sign, the big "Welcome to Wrigley Field" sign.
Was right, the marquee, yeah.
the Marquis was there then, and that was the first first inkling that Ernie had of where he was going, what he was doing. They take him upstairs and they say, "Young man, here's your contract. Sign it here, please." Ernie just signed it. He didn't know what it said, you know. And all of a sudden, he's playing for the Cubs in a few days.
It's amazing, isn't it?
They signed Gene Baker to a contract then because they didn't want Ernie to come into the team being the only black player. So they brought in Gene Baker, who was a great player in their in Los Angeles for the team that the Cubs minor league team in Los Angeles, and probably should have been brought up sooner because he was a really good player. Well, they brought the two of them up together.
Wow, yeah, amazing story, amazing book, amazing research. Like everyone said, Ron. I mean, I was blown away by it. I couldn't get enough of it. So if you haven't read it, Let's Play 2, get out there and read it. I mean, come on. And I hope it's on the big screen one day that way, the way you did the research on it, man. I hope so.
I'd love to see it. I think you should be the director.
All right. Thanks, Ron. You know, I gotta ask you this.
You've done your dad. You might as well do Ernie too with that.
Yeah, you know, I'd love to, man. I tell you.
I love this old Cub. I thought.
Yeah. Oh well, thank you.
I appreciate that. Good. Very good.
Appreciate that. I gotta ask you about, you know, how did it start for you as a sports journalist? Where does that start? It's changed so much today, and you came up in a time and worked with so many, yourself being legendary newspaper men. I mean, tell me about the journey on that.
Well, my joke is I started writing sports for my high school paper and then for my college paper. My joke is that I knew what I wanted to be when I was 14 years old, and I never grew up. But I'll tell you, Jeff, there's a serious aspect to this. We all know what sports pages and newspapers have become, and it's not a pretty picture. So when I talk to guys from my era, we feel like we were very lucky. We came along in the golden age of newspapering. Maybe you'll remember that the papers were big, and they had lots of space, and the papers were making lots of money on want ads and, you know, just advertising. The papers were huge, and we went everywhere. We did everything. We whenever we had a story idea, we would tell the boss, and he'd say, "Yeah, go ahead," you know. And we were very lucky that we were able to go to the Olympics and go to the World Series and go to the Masters and cover Muhammad Ali's fights and that kind of a thing. And it's harder now. First place, there's no space. Second place, there's no money for the writers today. It's much more difficult. And the internet has sort of taken over. Newspapers have become, you know, they're very precarious. So our era of journalism, some of the great writers you're talking about, were friends of mine, people that I would see in press box. We had a great time, and I always wonder whether we appreciated it at the time. And I'd like to think that we did, because we had a lot of fun writing about sports and doing our jobs. And I think that sense of fun might be missing today, and I feel sorry for some of the people who are writing sports and doing a very good job of it, but they're working under very difficult circumstances. And, sometimes I feel like I have survivor's guilt. I made it through, you know.
You know what, though? I got to say, the guys that you were with, you guys, not only did you do sports, you did entertainment, you did music, you did a lot of stuff. You covered politics. I mean, look at some of the Studs Terkel. You had, Jerome Holston, Ron Sons, Mike Downey, Dave Hostra. You had Rick. You had so many guys, and
you're talking about the Chicago. I mean, Chicago was the home of a lot of newspaper people. It really was, and there's a real healthy competition between the Sun-Times and the Tribune that got us going, and the readership. Chicago's a great sports town, was and is. People loved their sports there. In many ways, I think sports defined Chicago in a lot of ways. You know, I remember cover the Bears winning the Super Bowl, in Jordan's early years when we were just getting a glimpse of what was going to happen. And when the Super Bowl and Jordan and the Cubs finally winning a World Series came along, it was all there was. I mean, that just took over the city. I mean, it's big in other cities too, but I don't think it's all consuming the way it is in Chicago, which is one of the reasons why it was a great town to write sports in. People cared.
Yeah, they did cure, man, and you guys cured. It was in your writing. It was in, just everything, your research, everything about all the guys I mentioned and yourself. Now, what were the rooms like, man?
Well, we just, it was all one big city room. You'd have a desk. We could look across and look at each other. Every sports department I was ever in. You'd look across the room and there were your colleagues. It was like just a great big, I don't know, you've seen films of newspapers, and that's what it was like.
Did you compete?
Had an office, might be the sports editor, so he could close the door when he was on the phone or something. But when we could hear other people, other writers interviewing the people they were talking to. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of community there.
Did you guys compete a lot? Did you compete for stories? Did you get along with everyone, or did you have some things where the relationships?
No, we all got along because we all had different beats. The baseball guys wrote baseball, and if I wrote, I was and football guys and basketball, but I wrote a column so I could write whatever I wanted to. But if I wrote something, if I went to a ball game and the beat guy was there, we'd talk. I'd say, listen, can I write this? And he'd say, sure. I mean, I would know to pick something that wouldn't get in the way of him writing his game story. And sometimes there might be some problems or so on. Like when you got into the playoffs in the World Series, you'd have 6 or 7 guys out there. And at that point, it kind of got to the point who's going to write what, But a little bit of conversation, and it never really got to be much of a problem.
Now, Ernie and Leo, that relationship was a tough one. What's your take on that? Because, why did he get on Ernie so much?
My understanding was, and I believe somebody told me this, and it makes perfect sense to me, that Leo, everywhere he went, he had to be the number one guy. Mm-hmm. And Ernie came to understand that Leo wanted to be Mr. Cub. Who did he pick fights with? Leo immediately comes to town. He picks fights with Ernie Banks and Jack Brickhouse. Now, 2 of the most popular people in town, certainly connected with the Cubs. And he just didn't get along with either one. Brickhouse hated him, and he hated Brickhouse. And he kind of used Ernie as an example. At one point, I forget the exact details, but the Cubs had lost a game, and he decided he was going to blame it on some pop fly at first base or something. I think they lost the game by 6 runs. So he's blaming it on a pop fly that maybe Glenn Becker should have caught, or Ernie, it fell at his feet, or whatever. And Leo goes off on Ernie at great length in the locker room, calling him, you old man, I don't know why I keep you around here. He might have used profanity. And Ernie came to understanding at that moment that he was using Ernie as an example to the rest of the team. I'm going to get on this old man, and believe me, I'm going to get on you too. Be careful. And his teammates, this was the part that his teammates adored him. They loved Ernie. Yep. They loved the way he played. They loved his attitude. They loved being around him. He was willing to help them and so on. And when Ernie looked around and saw pity in the eyes of his teammates, that really hurt him. But remember what I said about Ernie avoiding controversy, avoiding drama? Mm-hmm. Even after Leo died, Ernie would never say a bad word. He said plenty to his teammates, to Fergie and Billy and the rest of them. But Leo was just trying to give me a kick in the pants. I was getting older. I needed somebody to get on my case. He would never, till the day Ernie died, never say anything bad about Leo. And Leo treated him very badly.
Yep.
For Leo's own reasons. And that didn't help either.
Those reasons make total sense because, Leo didn't seem like he was a racist or anything like that because he was with Jackie and Willie Mays really, really respected him, right? And so...
Yeah, I don't think race had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But I think it was just that, I don't know, he was there. Here's the thing. Willie Mays comes to the New York Giants when he's a rookie. And Leo, rightly or wrongly, can take credit for Willie's advancement, for Willie's being so great. He could bask in Willie's greatness,
Right.
Fairly or unfairly. Ernie was a 2-time MVP. He's 36, 37 years old, but he couldn't take any credit for Ernie. Ernie was already a great star, so there was nothing in it for Leo if Ernie does well. And there was a joke it wasn't a joke really. He tried to replace Ernie at first base. Fergie told me this. He tried to replace replace him at first base every spring training for 5 years. And then he starts rattling off the names. Lee May, John Bacabella, this one. And I looked it up, and it was really 9, not 5.
Wow.
And every year, there would be somebody new at first base in spring training, and every year Ernie would earn the job back by May, and the other guy would be gone.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's no point why Leo did that. He just made the team worse by doing that because everyone loved Ernie. You know what I mean? It's crazy that you would and just if he went the other way, what could have happened? You know what I mean? He's trying to, because it's about Leo having the power to run the club, but he didn't need that. Leo was already powerful without having to do stuff like that, right?
Man, he would tell the press, he's an old man. Why are you talking to him for?
Yeah.
His time has passed. He would say
high school stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
way
awful. Whereas think about it for a minute. Supposing Leo would come and he had embraced Ernie. Ernie's my guy. He's the rock.
Oh, God.
He's the old veteran.
Yeah.
Ernie would have run through a wall for him.
Oh,
Sure, he's going to need a little rest. We're going to have other people around, but Ernie's going to be my guy. But Leo couldn't do it because it had to be all about Leo.
Yep. Yeah, that's the problem right there. And so he did it with Jack Brickhouse too, which I heard that too. So it makes total sense. Yeah, it's too bad. Yeah, really too bad.
Yeah.
But that's how those old, some of the guys just had their ways, and that was Leo's side that took him down. I mean, he lost a lot of seasons that way, didn't he? I didn't realize that he had a lot of years where he failed at the end as a manager.
He had the one great year in, what was it, 54? Yeah, right. 51, where they came back and they won. They beat the Giants, beat the Dodgers in the last game of the season. Giants won the pennant, that kind of thing. But he had many seasons where he was ahead and he blew it. I went and looked it up, and I'm going to say something terrible. I think he was a bad manager. I think he was. Leo was in baseball for 26 years. He won 3 pennants. Big deal. And 1 World Series. Cedar Gaston won 2 World Series. I mean, I just think Leo was his reputation and his way he handled himself and so on. He was always he's out of baseball for a while after he was coaching for the Dodgers.
Right.
And then he goes to TV and radio, where he's actually pretty good. He was a very charming guy. He always said, he's always very interesting. And he was good at that. But he was up for every job that came up. They always mentioned Leo. He was just in the rotation then. And I just think it was because of his reputation and because everybody remembered that one great season because of Willie Mays. Whereas if they really looked at the record, I think you could see that he wasn't really a very good manager.
Right, yeah. He couldn't do the whole season without melting down in some kind of way. Yeah. And it was, I remember as a kid, being around Leo, it was, he was a strong presence. I was never afraid of him. As a kid, usually you might be scared of some things, right? I didn't like clowns when I was a kid. So, but Leo didn't scare me.
Didn't you and your brother run around under the stands and into?
We were.
You guys had a charmed life.
We did. We had a charmed childhood. Let's get that straight, Ron. Not a charmed life, a charmed child.
But you were out shagging fly balls. And didn't people recognize you? Tell your dad to have a good game and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was. What a childhood. Dream. Yeah, that's all we knew, though, right? That's all we knew. We grew up in it, so we didn't know any different until it ended. We're like, where'd that go? So I've been trying to find it ever since. But no, it was, that was something.
Ronnie told me some of those stories. Your brother told me some of those stories.
Yeah, of course. We got a lot of them.
Run into Leo's office while the game was going on.
Like Ronnie. I had to follow my brother around, Ron, and Ronnie was tough to follow around. He was a tough kid. I mean, so he'd get us into some certain situation. I'd be like, I didn't do this. I'm just following him. But anyway, no, we had a wonderful childhood, and it was great. I look back at that all the time I spent with my brother. It was something else. But Ron, I can't thank you enough for being on. You've had an amazing career. What a life. And you have a new book, right? The new book comes out when?
It's coming out Tuesday. Frank Chance's Diamond, the baseball journalism of Ring Lardner. And I'm going to be doing some promotion for it in spring training. I'm going to have fun down there. But it was fun to collect Ring's baseball journalism and compare him to his stories. And I hope people want to take a look at it. Jeff, this has been great fun for me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, so have I. And you're in L.A. now. You've been in L.A. for a while because you've lived out here. You've worked for the Times, and also you've done how did you, Betty Garrett, how did you do a book on her? Did you become friends with her? And
I did, actually. She's a wonderful musical comedy star, and I just, she did a one-woman show where she talked about a lot of the trouble in her life and about her husband and about political problems and so on, as well as Frank Sinatra, who she was in 2 movies with, and Mickey Rooney and Mr. Williams and all the people she worked with. And I just fell in love with the story. And she had a theater in the Valley not far from where I lived where she would appear from time to time. And I would just go. I talked to her about doing a book. Nah, I don't want to do that. I'm too busy living my life. I don't want to write about it. But I would just show up. Yeah, how are you? I wouldn't say anything about the book. And then one day she calls me and she said, I just got sick. I had a big problem, and I realized I'm not going to live forever, and I think we should do this book. So she didn't live far from me, so that was great fun, going over to her house where she would act out her life for me, including the way she would say, with all the dance movements and the songs and everything. That was fun to do. And it's fun to do something different from sports once in a while. But
that's what all you guys did. Yeah, you guys always that's the amazing thing about you, that group that you came up with. You guys do so much.
Well, a friend of mine, John Schulian, became a screenwriter out here in Hollywood. Just threw over sports writing and came out here and started writing for television. It was great,
Yeah.
He just loved it.
And Christy and myself, we went out and saw you host Ron Shelton with his new book with Kevin Costner. That was awesome.
That was fun. Imagine moderating a panel that included Ron Shelton and Kevin Costner. And Kevin was a nice guy. You know what he was afterwards? I mean, it was great. It's a wonderful book about the making of Bull Durham. It's called The Church of Baseball. Anybody who cares about Bull Durham needs to read this book. And you'll wonder, and this comes no surprise to you, you'll wonder how movies ever get made.
Right.
Ain't that the truth? Hurdles and all the handicap. Anyway, it was great being on with them, and Kevin was great. He was really nice, told some great stories, and I really enjoyed that evening. Yeah, it was fun.
That was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. Well, Ron, I hope I run into you soon out here. We'll get some lunch. Thank you again for being on.
Good to see you again.
God, this was wonderful. All right, I'll talk to you soon, Ron.
It's a deal,
you take care.
Thanks. Oh, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That moment was brought to you by the Audio Suite, a sound recording, design, editorial, and mixing company for film, broadcast, advertising, music, podcasts, audiobooks, and multimedia industries. The Audio Suite provides high-quality services at cost-effective solutions to meet your post-production needs. Voiceover, narration, ADR, sound design, sound effects, editorial and sweetening, recording, mixing, mastering, audio restoration, and more. The Audio Suite will get you to the finish line on time and on budget. Steve Harrison, owner, designer, mixer, has decades of experience and has worked with various clients from HBO Films to Penguin Random House to us, Santo Films. When we needed post-production mastering for our independent film Dead in 5 Heartbeats, the Audio Suite was our go-to place. Steve is knowledgeable, reliable, and always delivers the highest quality. Go to www.audiosuitestudios.com. We highly recommend.
Crackerjack.
This call is being recorded.
If they come today, they're not going to play. They're going to be so out of shape.
Jackie!
What are you doing, Mo?
What are you doing?
I'm watching Michael play basketball. Can I call you back?
Oh, basketball.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the Cubs. What do you think they're going to be this year?
I think they're going to be good.
You do.
I'll call you back.
What
Well,
do you mean you call me back? You're on my podcast right now. You can't just call me back.
I can't call you back?
No, I'll call you back. All right. I'm
Okay, call me back
by the one friend that thinks he knows everything about the Cubs. What's that?
Yeah, no, I like the manager. I think we need Bellinger, but you don't want to sign him to a long-term deal.
Oh, is that all you're giving me right now? All right. I'm going to call you back. I tried Spiro's. Are you not working at Spiro's today? What's going on?
No, I got basketball with the kids today.
Okay. So is Spiro's open? Because I wanted to order something.
Yeah, it's open.
Okay, I called over there. I couldn't get anybody, so I was trying to get
you. You want me to Uber it?
Yeah. Pack it nice, brother.
Dude,
Yes,
I've been wanting a bomber real bad. So
yeah, we'll do the dry ice thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Can that work with a bomber?
Yeah.
You sure about that? I don't know if that can work with a bomber. Dipped in au jus?
No.
I don't know.
We freeze it. We freeze the juice in the beef.
You freeze the bomber? All right, we'll talk about that. Okay, I think the bomber always need to. All right. When are you going to be around?
The bomber when? In about 10 minutes. Goodbye.
All right, I'm calling you back in 10 minutes. Goodbye.
Call me back in 10. Bye.
This call is being recorded.
Hold on.
Hey, Jack, you're my crackerjack. And let me tell you this: it's the first show of the new season, and
boy.
I want to ask you something, man. Now, the Cubs didn't do much dealings this off season.
Not yet.
Tell me what you think, because you think you got it all down with the Cubs. You know what they need, So let me have it right now, coming from Peter Nestos.
Well, I would love for them to sign Bellinger.
Too much money.
Obviously, exactly. You don't want to sign him for a 5-year deal. You know what I mean? Ideally, it would be a couple years because your farm system is supposed to be loaded, and you don't want to block those young players from development. But you also want to win.
Yeah, I get it, but he's not worth $200 million. He's not worth $200 million.
Not at all.
We know that.
Not at all.
So,
and obviously, the market's telling you that. Otherwise, he would have been signed.
Yeah. Well, what do you sign him for? If you're a GM, what do you sign him for? Because you always want him to be a GM. So just tell me what you would sign him for, GM.
So what are they going for right now? What are these contracts going for? Who's the latest player to sign?
No, he wants $200 million. He wants maybe $200 million for 7 years, and maybe even a little more.
Okay,
that's what I think.
So he's wanting $30 million a year.
Yes, $30 million a year.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I'm offering.
Yeah.
I'm offering 3 years. 3 years, and I'm paying a little bit more.
A little bit more than what?
I'm going to pay $30 million a year.
For 3 years, he's not going to do 3 years, man.
Okay, well, let's see what else is out there.
He's not going to do 3 years. Well, it might be smart to do 3 years and then get another contract for that, but this is his contract. He's going for it. He knows it. He had a great year. Scott Boras is his agent, which kind of sucks, but he's going for it, which I think he should play for the Cubs if he's smart. He should do a good deal, but he won't because that's how it is today. And you understand it is because they got to look out for themselves, or else, as you saw in L.A., they'll just let him go. So I think this is the time that
so do the Cubs. The Cubs have to look out what's best for them. You don't want to tie up. You're not going to tie him up to a 7-year deal. You're not going to sign him to a 5-year deal. You're just not.
No. 5 years they might do it. He's 28 by 33, still good. I'd do 5, no more than that, and then an out clause for both of them after 3. But I just think
I would do it.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen. Okay, that's not going to happen. So he's not going to be on the team. 3 years with an option. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Where's he going to go?
Well, I'm just saying he's probably not going to go for the deal unless he has nowhere to go. So let's hope it's that way. But I would not want to see the Cubs give him more than he deserves and a longer contract because we got some young players, and this game has changed now. These guys aren't as consistent as they used to be in the past. And I like Belly, but I want to see that center fielder Pete Armstrong play. He didn't get enough of a chance to do his thing, so I want to see him play.
Right, and how about the other outfielder that we got in the Chris Bryant trade?
Right. Yeah.
That kid was on fire, and then they sat him. They didn't play him.
Yeah. That's I think why they got rid of Ross there at the end, where he kind of got a little tight down the stretch there in playing guys. But we'll see, man. Now, other than that, then just let him play. Just let's see the new guys. I'd rather see a season like that than waste a big contract on one guy. But we'll see.
Right. What about third base? What do you think about third base?
Oh, I don't know why they didn't take what's his name who went to Toronto
from Boston.
Oh, the leprechaun?
Yeah, take him, man. God, he would have been great in Chicago for 1 year. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, that move I didn't understand. But anyway, man, how's everything going? You know, I wanted to call
Kids are
you.
good.
Good. Talk about Spiro's. How long has Spiro's been around?
Going on 60 years, my friend.
Is that unbelievable? 60 years your dad started the restaurant on Waukegan and Lake Street. Anyone doesn't know who's listening to the show in Chicago, you got to go to Spiro's Deli in Glenview. That's where I hung out as a kid all the way through until I left Chicago. So, wow, man. What year was that, buddy, that it opened?
It would have been 65.
65. Wow.
Yep.
Now you took it over for your dad, and you've had it for how long now?
I've been doing it for 30 years, which is unbelievable.
God, 30
right
years.
Before my dad passed away. Yeah, 94.
Right. 94.
Yep.
So it's going to be
94.
30 years. When did your dad pass away? What year was that?
94.
God, it's going to be 30 years.
November 8th of 94. Yeah.
Can you believe that? It's going to be 14 years since my dad passed away. Is he like 14 years?
No, which is crazy.
Right?
Which is crazy.
God.
Yeah. No, he loved you, my man. He loved you.
Oh, your dad was awesome, man. Yeah. No doubt, man. No doubt.
Loved your father. Loved the whole family.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think your dad was one of the first people when we moved to Glenview that he met in Glenview. You know, just going into the deli.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And then from there they both like football in the off season. So.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did, man. Your dad had all the numbers.
Yes, they did.
So, yeah, man, that's amazing looking back at it now, man, isn't it? I mean, it's been that long, and now you have 3 kids. You live in the same home that you live with your dad. You went and bought it then, right back.
Yep.
And
same house I grew up in. Yep.
Same house you grew up in. What's that like, man? To live in the same house you grew up in?
Oh, it's great. It's a wonderful. You know, I wanted to give my kids the same experience I had growing up. You know, with the neighborhood and being part of this community. It was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yeah, man. And talking about your kids, you're an older father. You know, Tara's, your wife, is younger than you, just as mine is. But
we did something right, marrying younger.
Yeah, you got that right, man. You got that right. So let me talk about though. You became a father in your late 40s, right?
Early 40s.
Oh, was it early 40s?
41.
Oh, yeah. 41. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you had Mary Catherine at 41, and then you had the boys 44, 46. Anyway, you're 60 now, right? 61.
61.
You're 61. Now, how old are your boys right now? Your 2 boys.
My daughter is 18. She turned 18 in August.
Right.
My Tommy turned 14 in August. And my Michael will be 13 in April.
Unbelievable. And great kids. You have wonderful kids, buddy. And I can tell you're an amazing father. And I got to say this, though. You are an older father, which brings a lot of life experience. Do you think that helps as far as, because you coach your kids? And I want to tell you one, your kids are great. Mary Catherine is a great athlete, but, you know, going to the boys as far as baseball, they're like big-time baseball players. Like Michael's hitting he hit like 13 home runs in Little League. Am I wrong?
Oh no, he hit more. But yeah,
okay.
They're good players.
No, they're really good players. You're talking to me now.
Yeah.
They're really good players.
Yeah.
So you can say that. So I can say it now. Whether they can go to that next level as far as Division I college and pro ball, it's all about, you know, the kind of fundamentals and having a strong mental approach to the game. But I've never seen, and Tommy's a hell of a pitcher, a hell of a hitter too, but they're just really good baseball players. And, you know, I hope they continue, because out of all my friends, and even counting me and Ronnie, you know, I've never seen that kind of promise at that young of an age, the way they hit and the way they pitch. So what did you do to make them good ball players?
Oh, we just, you know what, Jeff, it's practice, fundamentals. spending time with them, playing catch, making sure they enjoy the game, and wanting to put in the effort. You see too many parents that are just way over the top, and they're not allowed to be kids. And I think that's what hurts everybody.
Huh. Now, speaking of parents, it's a different youth baseball today than when we grew up. Okay, got a lot of traveling teams. Is there a lot of competition with the parents when you're on these teams?
Normally not. Because they're more community based. Depending on the level of travel, there's so many travel teams. Some of these parents are cutthroat and they jump from team to team each year. If their kid isn't batting fourth or being the number one pitcher or playing shortstop, first thing they do is want to move their kid.
Gotcha.
And that's the biggest thing I see. Here in the suburbs of Chicago, we're pretty lucky. We pretty much had the same core for the last 4 years, and the kids really like each other, Hey, listen, we know everybody's not going to the majors. Our goal is just for them to enjoy.
Is that true that they know? Is it, wait, cut. All right, come on. Is that true that they know? It seems like every parent thinks their kid's going to the big leagues.
No. You and I know they're not going to the majors.
Okay, but the parents.
Some of these parents think their kids are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them do.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this: the coaching today versus, you coach football, you coach basketball, you coach baseball. You're year round. You and Billy, your brother Billy Nestos, you guys, unbelievable how much you have given back to the community and coaching. It's amazing, pal. It really is. You dedicated your life to that, and your kids seeing that, and the community seeing that, and then going in the Spiros. They know you from working there. So quite a life in Glenview, man, as far as where you took this.
Yeah.
Now your kids, go ahead. You want to say something?
I said, I've been very blessed, to grow up in this area, and able to give back, for all these years, it's really fulfilling, to see these kids come back and watching them play in high school and some in college, and say to me what a difference I've made in their lives. It means something, It
That's
really
awesome,
does.
Man.
It's
do you think
special.
Do you think you stayed in Glenville because of the restaurant, because of what your dad left there?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I did.
The main reason?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I always tell people, I'm just a caretaker. I still think it's theirs 30 years later, and I'm just running it for them.
Wow, man. Yeah, that's something. And being an older parent, Peter, do you think you bring a little different perspective to your boys than maybe, like, let's say if you were in your 20s and 30s when you had them?
Absolutely. First of all, it's all about them. Everything I do is for them. You know what I mean? I had my time, and I'm glad I did. But now, the older I get, it's more about them and just trying to tell them my experiences and what I've learned through the years. And hopefully, they listen a little bit instead of in one ear and out the other, but, I do think being an older parent has helped.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I couldn't imagine myself trying to parent in my 30s, 20s, and even, through a lot of my life, because I was just searching for my own identity, but the older you get now you slow down and you start to give back in many ways. We don't have kids; that's just the way it turned out. But you give back in other ways, and man, yeah, you as a parent and the way that you've guided your Mary Catherine's in college now, but the boys are playing baseball, 3 sports you're playing, which doesn't happen much anymore. You pick one sport and you go for it, right? So That's cool that you're letting them play all 3 still. I do think when you get to the highest level, you got to be careful, because I do think you got some baseball players there. But hey, my dad did it. Why can't they do it? Go back to the old school way.
Well, my thing, Jeff, is I tell all these kids, play all sports, play all seasons, because someday somebody's going to take it away from you, you know, and then you're going to have nothing, and enjoy it and play with your friends. Like, the other thing I tell them is, you don't play for the coaches. You play for one another. You know, that's who you play for. You play for your buddies. As you know, all the years playing with you, you know, we played for one another. We had great coaches and we had coaches that we didn't like, you know, but we always played for each other, you know, and we know who you have, you know, when you have their back and everything else like that. There's nothing like it. And getting back to what you said before, buddy, about, you know, being older and everything else like that, you always knew who you were. You know what I mean? You always knew who you were growing up. And that's something that I really loved about you.
I don't know if I could say that thinking back, but hey, if you say that, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you, bud. But yeah, I still was searching. Yeah. There's no doubt. But yeah, man, ups and downs in life, man. You know, you change, you know, so some people have to leave and some people stay home. I left, you know, the area. You stayed, and it's great. We're both happy men now, you know, But you knew who you were, though. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you know, I mean, you had a passion, and you went with that passion, you know, and like you said, it's been up and down, and you still went for that passion because that's what you wanted to do. You know, a lot of people would have quit and moved on to something else, you know, but you didn't, you know, and that's no, I didn't.
One of the things that I really love about you.
Oh, thanks, man. No, I didn't. There's something in me that just I couldn't. Yeah. So, but man, it's just great. It's great to see what you're doing with your kids and your family, and you got a wonderful wife and Sarah. I wanted to call and, hey, man, I do crave for a bomber a lot of times, and even a poor boy. You know, I used to mix it up. It's like, what do I get today at Sparrows? Do I get a bomber or do I get a poor boy? You know, those were my two choices. And the bomber was the one that those are the go-tos. You got to. You know, I don't even think I had a third because I really went with the bomber most of the time. And then it's like, if I come back at dinner, give me the poor boy. So, but man, the bomber is the best sandwich I think I've ever had. That should be illegal. Yeah, right. So, but that's great, man. Oh, dude. So, well, keep in touch, brother. Let me know. You'll be giving me some reports on the Cubs during the season. I know you will. I still think they need a couple of players, but who knows, man? I don't even really know who's down beneath that's coming up. You know, that's what I'm looking for because I heard they got a lot of talent down there. So
supposedly we have 4 or 5 players in the top 100. You know, that are ready to come up. You know, somewhere during the season. You know, I don't want to clog any of these spots. You know, that's getting back to Bellinger. I'd love to see a 3-year deal.
It's not going to happen. I'm just tell you right now, it's not going to happen. That's in another lifetime. So 3-year deals aren't happening for these guys. So unfortunately, but we'll see. We'll see if I'm wrong.
All right.
All right, buddy. Well, I hope to see you this summer to watch the boys play some baseball. If not, keep sending the videotapes, okay? Because I love those bombs. I can't believe some of the home runs.
You got it, buddy.
I can't believe some of the home runs they hit. It's crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Remember the Nestos name, okay? Michael and Tommy Nestos. Remember those two brothers. They're coming.
For only the right reasons. Peter. Only the right reasons. We don't want to see them in the paper.
You get there. Hey, man, you get there to the top of anything, it's the right reasons. It's very hard to get there on the wrong reasons. You're not going to stay long much, too, if there's not something working. So,
Thanks,
those are well-rounded boys, man. Keep them strong. Keep them mentally tough. That's my biggest thing. Keep them mentally tough, always. So, all right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Tell Sarah I said hello. Say hello to Christy. We love you guys, and hopefully we see you soon.
See you soon, brother. Bye.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Thanks for listening to our show, and a special thanks to our cool crackerjacks who have stayed with us through these winter months. And we're back at it for season 2. So you want to be a cool crackerjack, come on, sign on up. We got some great content outside of the actual special guests on our show, and we're going to have more of that coming around the corner too. So I hope you guys sign up for that. All right, and here they are, the special crackerjackers, our cool crackerjacks: Scott Nelson, Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Sherry Matarisi, Terry Rankin-Gurovitz, Terry O'Brien, Gary Tallman, and Anne-Marie Pascule.
This show is made possible because of all of them. and all of our subscribers. If you want to support the show and be a cool crackerjack yourself, subscribe on our Patreon page by clicking the link below this episode, or go to our Patreon tab on our website, www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com.
Remember to click the follow button for the next episode and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And don't hesitate to write, give us suggestions, tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com.
For my closing quote, people ask me what I do in winter when there's no baseball. I'll tell you what I do. I stare out the window and wait for spring. Rogers Hornsby.
Toodaloo!
SantoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and This Old Cub t-shirts. Get yourself one now at SantoFilms.com.